nothing sounds better than a well-built NA engine, but there's also sitting back and getting your ass handed to you in the seat by a big supercharged turbo car is also a completely different experience.
The torque numbers in a supercharged car are savage.
Yeah.
But then you get these high horsepower, V12s. Nothing sounds like them.
No.
But they're dogs off the line.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot.
They're only making power in that like
Top
upper
end.
3,000 RPM, and other that they're gutless to go drive around.
Welcome back to another episode of Modify with TrickFactory Customs. If this is your first time watching, my name is Elvis.
Tim.
Steve.
Awesome. Rob is not here again. He ditched us. But he'll be back. If you do not know, we are a podcast, Modify with TrickFactory. We just love to talk about cars. And so
say wild shit on the internet.
Exactly.
Sometimes we hurt people's feelings.
Yes. And on this episode, we are going to be talking about naturally aspirated versus turbochargers versus superchargers. So pretty much NA versus forced induction. Which is best? Is there anyone that's better? Because everyone is, or if you are in the car world, you've heard of there's no replacement for displacement. I think that's how that statement goes.
It's old school.
But I feel like that's how you.
I think that's kind of gone by the wayside
dated,
now.
But,
Yes. Or has it? That's the question we're going to be answering in this episode. Because we have all dealt with those cars, or we've all driven turbos, superchargers, NA. Steve has wired 1 billion of them. And he's seen a bunch of stuff like for high performance, and they've been either supercharged or turbo. And so he's going to bring his wisdom in that. And Tim has, you have a turbocharge. You have a turbo and supercharged
I've dealt
engines.
more with the packaging side of these systems.
Yes. So we're going to be diving into all of that, how, like, what you need as well to make a reliable, like, turbo/supercharged car, all of that, how difficult it is to package it, and again, which is best. And so with that said, we're going to dive in. Before we get started, talking of offending people on the internet, our last episode on EVs, oh my gosh, people are diehard at supporting gas cars. That's what I've seen this past week.
Yes, and for some reason, people's sexuality has come into
I know.
Like that seems to be the first defining factor. Is like right away, if you support this, you are this.
I know. Why are you gay? If you're electric for some reason, you're officially like a homosexual. It's weird. The internet is a weird and strange place, but
sadly, it's a dividing area.
That was the first time that
people.
I put the comment of the day. I wish I could find it because the guy's argument was amazing.
Yeah,
it was like the transition from the ox to the horse, from the horse, the steam power to petrol. And he's like, I wonder if the pioneers in the petrol engine had their sexuality, questioned at the time.
Yeah, you're going away from horses.
You're going, you
Come
must
on.
be gay. Gas engines are so gay.
I know.
Doesn't make any sense, but whatever.
Yeah, so we're going to see, I don't know, if we're alive 20, 30 years from now, or like, I guess in the future when we're all electrified and they're outlawing gas cars, if that's even a thing.
I don't think it's a thing.
I don't think it's going to be in our lifetime.
I think if anything,
don't.
there's going to be alternative fuels. I don't think it's ever going to go full EV.
Yeah.
They can't. They don't. They have to come up with something else.
Yeah, the infrastructure, I don't even think it's even there yet. Like,
it's definitely, the infrastructure is definitely not there
No.
as far as charging everyone's electric car and the simple mining and getting the pure raw pieces to make all that stuff up is simply not attainable.
yeah.
Plus, they're already dabbling. Like you got Porsche and all these guys dabbling in synthetic
fuels.
fuels, and so I think there's going to be a lot more sort of effort and emphasis put on that rather than just straight EV stuff.
That is true.
I agree.
I think that's exactly going to happen. Like you said, like the Porsche or the Topaz. Like I feel like there's been a lot of research, but it's still so expensive right now.
But that's just it. Like any emerging technology is always crazy expensive on the top side, and then it's as people more and more get invested into it, that it's a viable thing. That technology becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper down to the consumer level, then we can all have it in our whatever device or vehicle that ends up being.
Yeah, but it always costs something to make something. Like,
Of course.
it's never going to be.
It's the balance. There's already crazy technologies like hydrogen and all these other things that we've discussed that are awesome, but they're just still a little bit explosive.
Yeah. I feel like hydrogen is not that, like, people just think you're carrying a nuclear bomb in your car.
It's like that. It's an amazing technology and it's super efficient and it's really, really good. But the safety side of it,
I guess so.
You got to work on. Like, you get rear-ended, you're going to the moon. So once they get that part of it figured out, and maybe that'll be it.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yes, and if you don't know, in our last episode, we talked about electrifying classic cars and if that's a sin and all of that. And so the opinions were very divided. And we had the guys from Revolt on. They make pretty much crate motors, electric crate motors. So you can check that out if you're interested. But yeah, so. And so with that said, we are going to dive into today's episode of turbos, NA, Supercharger. And so before we dive into, I guess, all the differences, for people that might not, I guess, know what everything is, like all of those different things, let's just quickly define them real quick.
They're the same thing.
What, NA and turbo?
Supercharger and a turbocharger.
Yeah, I guess that is. Yeah.
It's just the air compressor. It's
Same
just how
but
it's
different.
spinning.
Yeah. Same but different. Yeah. So so they both compress air, but they do it in different ways. Yeah. So how does turbo do it?
With exhaust gas.
Okay.
Exhaust gas spinning a turbine, spinning the compressor side, forcing air into the motor. Supercharger, belt,
chain,
whatever you got going
direct
on.
drive, gear drive. There's all different variations of it.
Yeah. Yes. And so but there's big differences between turbochargers and superchargers. So what are some minus, like the belt drive and chain drive and exhaust gases? What are some other differences between both methods of forced induction?
One, in theory, is using wasted energy, and the other one is parasitic. So it's pulling off the motor to drive. Yeah. So it takes power to make power.
Yeah. So supercharger, it takes power to make power. So you have to have enough power to
overcome to actually make it actually be a benefit to you.
Yes.
So then turbochargers at a certain level, once they start making crazy amounts of boost, there is an argument that it takes a bit of power to do too.
Once the back pressure reaches a certain point in the exhaust, the turbo becomes less efficient.
You can't get it out as fast as you're getting it in.
Yeah. Okay.
So it starts to pile up in the exhaust, and then the exhaust flow can't go out the actual engine itself because it's meta resistance.
So it's almost like a bottleneck.
Exactly.
Okay. And so for that back pressure, like what would be like a solution to that? I guess there isn't
really. It depends on your packaging. It's completely.
That's the tuning side of it.
Yeah, it's a specific instance per car you're dealing with.
Yeah. And so let's talk about superchargers. It takes power to move power. So it is less efficient than a turbo, or no?
I wouldn't say less efficient. It's just that you always have to overcome how much resistance the supercharger's using as far as the benefit side goes. Like on the big pro mod cars that I normally work on, some of these superchargers can take in excess
1,000 horsepower.
Yeah, and upwards of that level of power to create the boost that it is actually making.
Insane.
So so you have to have a gigantic supercharger to overcome and a humongous engine to actually make it be an efficient system.
And so those pro mods, because I was just like, ooh, let me just do a research on this topic before we do it. Yeah. But I wasn't looking at pro mods, but I was looking at dragsters, and they were talking. I don't know if pro mods is exactly the same, but
similar
they were talking about they make how much power does?
That's like 7,500, 8,000.
No, top fuel. If it's a fuel car, they're going to be an 11,000 horsepower range.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. And so they said it takes about 900 to 1,000 horsepower just to run the blower to make enough power. And so why don't they use turbos?
It's a spec for the class. At the end of the day, there's still rules for the class it has to be. So they all have to run the same type of forced induction. So they all run a modified supercharger on them that's class legal.
Okay.
So it's got nothing to do with that they couldn't run turbochargers. It's because of the class that they're racing in is the type of unit that they have to use.
Yeah, there was a part of me that was thinking, I'm like, is it because turbos don't produce instant power? Because you have to build up, like you have to produce as much.
You can get around that by staging the car in certain ways. On if you get down a couple of levels in like a Pro Mod class, you'll see a range of a whole bunch of different engine types where you'll have a nitrous assisted car, you'll have a turbo car, you'll have a blower car, whether the blower car is a Procharger style blower, like a gear driven setup, or it's a standard style, like either a screw blower or a Roots kind of belt driven deal. So if you get down to that class, you'll see a whole bunch of different level types of engines and sizes and different power adders because the class allows a whole bunch of different types of induction systems.
Oh, that's interesting. And then you talked about different types of superchargers. So there's not just one type.
Absolutely not. No, there's
so
a whole bunch
like,
of types.
So like, what are the main ones?
So you go your old school, which is like your classic style Roots blower. So it's essentially two spinning triangles, essentially on each other. And they're kind of forcing air into the motor. And then you have a modified version of that, what they call a high helix, which is basically a twisted version of that. So they kind of have a little bit more efficiency on the actual screws themselves. And then from there, you have a proper screw blower with two screws essentially forcing the air into the motor. And those will both be a belt-driven setup.
Okay.
And then you can go to your a kind of gear-based setup or belt, like the Procharger style setup, where it's got either going to be gear-driven or still belt-driven on that front. But it looks more like, I'd say, a turbocharger.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's got more of a turbocharger look to it, but it's essentially a belt-driven setup.
Okay.
And
centrifugal supercharger.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. So but it also has its issues. They generate a lot of heat, as opposed to the kind of screw or Roots blowers. So you have to while they can make lots of power, the opposite side of it is that they generate a ton of heat.
Let me go back to turbos a little bit because we currently have LS swapped, or not LS swapped. It's a twin turbo Tahoe / Lambo Euro. But there's different types of turbos, as there are different types of or turbochargers versus superchargers. Yeah. But for turbo, the one that we have versus the ones that are on your Evo, what is the difference with the mechanism for how it works?
It's just the bearings that are in it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So mine have ceramic ball bearings.
Okay. So compared to like the amount, like what is a benefit of that? Like, is it just okay? Not like heat,
less drag. Like, as you have a journal bearing, it's essentially just the metals slipping on each other with a teeny tiny little film of oil in between it. So you're much more susceptible to heating up this cartridge where the bearings actually sit.
Okay.
So like longevity wise, the ball bearing is going to last a lot longer.
So it's less susceptible to like heat.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of those ones will be water cooled, and they gotta add a whole bunch of other things. So once you start progressing into ceramic ball bearings, you can eliminate some of those additional systems.
Yeah.
Try and keep the turbo cool.
I'm guessing like which is better depends on the purpose or
the purpose
that you're using.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely situational in my mind for what you would end up choosing as far as wanting to stay a naturally aspirated setup or wanting to do forced induction would completely depend on what the car was going to be.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to packaging on modern cars.
Yeah.
Okay. When you talk about packaging, could you expand on that?
The amount of displacement that they're using now and force inducting it is crazy. Like you got like 1.3 liter engines that are
300 horsepower.
Oh, yeah.
So they can make the packaging so much smaller now. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of modern cars with turbochargers in them, you don't even know they're turbocharged.
No. Turbo
like you can't even feel it. Like turbo technology is crazy now. Like just the electronics behind it to manage it, and as well as like variable vane turbos. There's no boost lag. There's no nothing. Like most of these cars, and it's transition. Like they're not even badged turbo anymore. Like we made it through that whole 80s, 90s things.
Turbo 3000.
Now almost everything is turbocharged, and there's no mention of it at all.
No.
Yeah. So what about the statement of like there's no replacement for displacement? Is that still a thing?
I think turbochargers, well, because you still calculated the amount of displacement because you're moving a certain amount of air. So it's the same as a blower. Like a blower is classified by how much air it moves. So you can get a 3-liter blower. So you're still adding displacement to a smaller engine. So basically, if you have a 5-liter engine with a 3-liter blower on it, it's equivalent to an 8-liter engine.
Oh, I've actually
that's
never
how
thought about that before.
I don't know how, but that's how they classify blowers. So you're still creating displacement.
Oh, shoot.
Based on the amount of air that you can move.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Huh. I
don't think they rate turbochargers in the same way because it's much different. Like a blower is more fixed.
Yes.
Based on how fast you're spinning it and the actual physical size of the blower you're using. Whereas a turbo is up and down based on, exhaust flow. And
we have a car with a big blower, but it
has a 3-liter blower.
Okay, the Wagner Supercharged V8. Yeah. Okay, at the shop. Okay, 3-liter. And what's the displacement for the actual motor?
It's a 427.
Oh wow, that's big.
It's a big engine.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Okay. And so what about, what do you need usually? I want to turbocharge my Beamer, for example, then it came NA. What usually do you need? You need, of course, the turbo. What else?
You need a way to spin the turbo so that your exhaust system needs to be modified. You need some way to seal your induction system because you're forcing air in. So you need some form of a manifold. So previously, supercharging carbureted cars and all those type of things caused a whole bunch of problems. Now modern cars, the way they work with a single throttle body, it makes it a lot easier because you just feed your turbo straight in there.
Yeah.
But if you have something like some BMWs with ITBs, you'd have to make some kind of plenum box for it to seal all those so that you can actually create boost pressure. Oh. So, and then some things just aren't, they're not really designed to do it. So carburetors, you're pushing air out of different orifices and you got to change all your floats and all this kind of stuff because you got plastic floats and you start pushing threads, it's going to
break.
Yeah, everything's no good. So there's lots of different challenges. But modern cars, fuel-injected cars, are really easily turbocharged.
Okay. And so, what do you need minus... Okay, you need turbo. You need to get your exhaust gases relocated to to spin the turbine.
Yeah.
And then what else?
Well, now you've shoved a whole bunch of extra air into the engine that never used to be there. So now how are you going to deal with that? You need to offset it with the right amount of fuel.
Yeah.
So now you're going to have to either upgrade your fuel system, injectors, fuel pump, fuel lines, depending on how big you go, and all the electronics to support it all now. And then a tuner who actually knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother podcast, I'm sure.
Yes.
It's everyone always just wants to do the whizzy stuff, but not all the stuff that actually makes the car actually function. That's always been my hugest beef with people is that I bought this big giant crazy turbo or supercharger, but then they'll still run on the stock fuel system.
Yeah.
And then they get mad either the motor pops or they can only make a little bit more power than it ever did stock because they simply can't turn it up because they don't have all the supporting pieces to go with it.
Mm-hmm. That's actually an interesting part that you mentioned of supporting mods, because for example the Evo, that's a completely built everything.
Yeah.
And you were at the tuners the other was there a bottleneck for you for I know it was the throttle body that was the issue.
Well, everybody makes these wild statements on the internet, but it's there's literally a formula.
Yeah.
So you can only make so much power based on your fuel and your air that you can provide it. Mm-hmm. So basically the bottleneck for my car for making more power is my injector size. Yeah. So no matter how much boost I throw at it, I don't have enough fuel to make any more than a very specific amount of power. Yeah. So if everything's working perfectly, you're going to make this much. Yeah. And if you get a tuner that's good, they'll tell you you have this, you can expect to make this.
Yeah. Oh,
absolutely.
That's it.
Oh,
There's
wow.
no way around it. it's literally math and science. Yeah. There's nothing. You can say all kinds of wild shit you want, but it's there's a set formula, and if you don't meet those criteria, you're not going to make power.
Really? Yeah. And so for your car, actually, let's dive into that again. So your car, what type of injectors do you currently have?
I have 1400 cc injectors.
Okay.
So basically, with my setup, I can make 8 to 1,000 horsepower before I run out of fuel.
Yeah.
And I have the ability to put a second set of injectors in or bigger injectors. I would probably be more inclined to put a second set of injectors just so that I can have better drivability. But Do I need it? I don't really need it. So I don't think I'll take it to that point. So being able to say that I'm capable of making this tremendous amount of horsepower is based on me changing a bunch of other things. So me to run my motor at 850 wheel horsepower is going to be insane.
Plenty.
And it'll last probably as long as I need it to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I've been telling people online that your car makes 1,500, so don't tell. It's between us. Don't.
It probably
don't.
Like when I spec'd it out, that was like one of the criteria. And basically the only thing I'd honestly have to do is probably, switch
Just
my injectors out,
Yeah.
crank her up.
Yeah.
The rest of my fuel system is capable of doing it.
Mm-hmm. And so for a lot of like pro mods that you do what kind of injectors do they have? What kind of injectors do they have? Do they have dual?
Completely depends on the car and the setup.
Yeah.
So if we're talking like a traditional kind of Brad billet Hemi kind of deal, a lot of guys are still running mechanical. So it's literally
mechanical.
Yeah. So we have a big giant mechanical pump that runs off basically the front of the camshaft.
Wow.
And it basically forcing a whole bunch of fuel into the little manifold, and it gets divided out to each of the cylinders through nozzles, essentially, different specific sizes. And so a lot of the guys will be running that setup if they're not comfortable running the EFI stuff. But if you're running the EFI stuff, most of the guys are running typically between 16 and 20 electronic injectors on it to meet the fuel requirements required to make
20 injectors.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
So usually we'll have 2 per cylinder, and then if it's a roots blower, we'll have a whole bunch on the top of the supercharger to keep the blower cold, and then we'll have another set in like the lower runners to kind of do some individual cylinder corrections, and then and then some of the blowers will have like in the hat itself, in the top of the supercharger, air goes in, we'll have like a spray bar in there to spray more methanol on top. Like it completely depends on what kind of blower setup and intake you got on it. Yeah.
And then I don't know if you've dealt with what did they call it? Like for example, like meth injection and all of that. What happens if you add that to your car? Like meth injection, or even like not I'm sure if you want to do nitrous, but if you want to, what happens? Because I know nitrous is technically another form of
it's a power
forced induction. Can you call it that?
Forced induction, but it's a power adder. Yeah.
And so what happens if you add, like, have you dealt with like nitrous powered?
I haven't done any boosted nitrous powered stuff, but I've played with nitrous lots in the past.
Oh, okay.
So to start adding those layers, it's just I haven't needed to.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, like turbochargers, basically a lot of guys would run nitrous with turbo setups because of lag.
Yeah.
So they'd use the nitrous to get off the line until they started making boost. Yeah. But now you don't really need to do that. Like turbo technology and programming has come to a point where you don't really need to do that anymore.
You see still some of the Formula Drift guys will still run a small nitrous kit to help out with the boost, because they'll run a fairly large turbo in some of those cars. So it's the only place I think I can still see it these days where someone's using a teeny tiny bit of nitrous just to help a little bit of pre-spool up to get the turbo going. Yeah,
because I feel like with turbos, like even if the technology's there, but I still all the turbocharged cars that I've driven, you can still feel the lag. Like even the people say, you can't feel it. Like you can still feel the lag. Like even if it's a split second, but you can still feel like when the turbo kicks in.
Yeah.
And so for nitrous, I feel like I've never played with a nitrous car before with the turbo.
More of an
so I'm curious to know what that feels like.
Type of setup, like some of the bigger nitrous cars that you deal with, they're multiple kits, like 4 or 5 kits of nitrous, 6 kits of nitrous, depending what kind of class you're in. But in that instance, you're going to run a giant engine with it. In the one small tire class, like most guys are running a 650-inch engine, because that's what the class allows, and they can run 2 kits of progressive nitrous in the car, and it's those guys could be flowing in excess of like 2,000 horsepower with the nitrous.
That's crazy.
With the motor's making probably 800-900 NA, and they're flowing tons of nitrous through it. So it's and there's different ways to get the nitrous in the engine. So you can just have a typical solenoid go on and off, where the solenoid just open, all the nitrous going in. Where more modern cars these days run a progressive setup, so you can actually like pulse the nitrous up to and ramp it in, which is a much safer way to do it. And it definitely helps out get the car going down the racetrack for sure. But
So what about, have you guys heard about electric turbos? Is that a thing?
yeah,
I don't
it's
think they've had a lot of success with it.
no,
but
yeah.
So from what you guys have heard, because I just thought about this, I haven't done research on it, but how does, I mean, obviously an electric, how does that work? And have you seen it be successful?
I wouldn't even call it a turbocharger at that point, because it's pretty much an electric supercharger. Because like, how could you? Because it's not running the exhaust
There's
gas.
no exhaust. It's just
So
an electric
in my
air
mind,
pump.
yeah,
No longer a turbo.
yeah.
at that point.
So I wouldn't specify it as a turbo myself, but the other one I've seen is like a hydraulic turbo, or like electric over hydraulic feeding. Like,
How does that work?
so hydraulics can have a way higher RPM and way higher pressure value than the electric motor is probably ever going to have. Because you got to think a turbocharger, when it's maxed out spinning, is 140, 150,000 RPM.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't know of a lot of electric motors that can kind of turn that RPM reliably. So hydraulics would be the other answer to try and get the turbo going that quick. But
So you just like shoot
Yeah.
hydraulic
Yeah.
fluid at a
On the
very
other side.
high pressure?
Yeah.
Hydraulic pump pressures are
Yeah.
insane.
Like that would be more of an ideal situation in my mind if you're looking for an alternative way to make.
Have you seen that in like?
I believe
any
Garrett
drag cars?
does make a hydraulic turbo.
Oh wow.
I don't know if it's I believe it to be like an industrial type of thing. I don't think it's like a performance part of any kind, but I do believe reading a while back that there is a hydraulic turbo out there.
Yeah.
I wonder what they would need that for.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm wondering, like, if there's a cap for like the electric turbo, because I have heard of them, but I don't know if they're in use anywhere, or if it's one of those like snake oil type of things, like electric
No, there's
turbos.
been a bunch of people attempt it,
Okay.
and it just hasn't really had much success.
Yeah.
I think maybe now that things are progressing into like brushless motors and all that kind of stuff, there's probably more opportunity now.
Yeah.
But before, they just didn't have the jam to do it.
Yeah.
Because the more you boost you're creating, the bigger the load on the electric
Yeah.
motor is.
Oh, that's
You got to
true.
think
yeah.
you need a
yeah.
fairly large
You need a pretty
motor,
strong motor.
Yeah, and then you need the power supply for that motor.
Yeah,
to keep
you
up
almost
with
need like
the
a
demand.
standalone system for the
Yeah.
whole thing.
And then you need crazy voltages, so it's going to start adding all these other things that you got. It's not just going to run off a 12-volt system
No.
to be able to make enough
Very limited.
No.
to be
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Huh. And then now we're talking of electric now, but I feel like now there's so much technology for making cars run. Now we're seeing in these, like, for example, like a 296 or something that uses electric whatever backup. I don't even know how the electric system works in conjunction with the gas motor and all that. But have you seen, like, or have you encountered, I don't know if it hit the drag strips yet, but them using electric power to kind of like
No.
before the turbo like starts spooling and
No.
all of that for the electric to kick in first? No. Even like
But I mean, you look at a lot of hybrid supercars, and that's what they're doing.
yeah.
They're using the hybrid, like the electric part of it, to fill that gap from the line up until the motor starts making enough RPM to start producing real power. So the combination of the two, now you have insane cars.
Yeah.
Like,
There's no lag at all. Like,
No lag at all. You
acceleration
can't feel it
is-
at all.
instant acceleration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when that was a huge drawback, or that was a huge potential drawback back in the day of like, everything is going to start to change to electric, and everything is, or like everything's going to hybridized until we're thinking of the Prius for performance. And but I feel like have you guys heard about what's the new Lamborghini out? The new V12 Lambo. Because we were like, the V12 is going to be killed. But I think there's the Revuelto or something.
Not
They
sure.
just launched it, but it has like 1,000 horsepower with the same V12.
Yeah.
And then the electric motor that has 100 and whatever horsepower, 150 or something.
Yeah, and that's
Makes it
enough to like
1,000.
make that difference getting the car to accelerate like a rocket ship, like all those kind of supercars do these days. I think it's a brilliant technology. Formula One uses it. Le Mans cars use it. Like it's a brilliant setup, the hybrid setup. Like that's where a lot of racing's gone to because of that pure raw acceleration that those two combined can actually make.
Yeah.
But as
And
far
I
as
think
it on a consumer level, I think that's years away from anything.
I don't know.
Yeah.
My truck's hybrid. And the thing's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one filled up her truck and got back in. It's like range 880K. I was
What
like,
truck?
Oh, she's got a hybrid Highlander.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
800.
yeah, it's crazy. So from that aspect of it, it's pretty amazing.
Well, I meant more from like a performance standpoint, like
Yeah,
where
from-
someone like I'm going to go get like this bolt-in kit to go in line with my Turbo
yeah, I don't
400
think
with the drag
that-
strip.
Yeah, the aftermarket.
Like, I'm not, yeah.
Like we had a conversation yesterday with somebody, and it was like the most. I don't want to say ridiculous, but it was just so oversimplified that I was just almost dismissed it, because like the reality of it is like, oh, I'm gonna just do this, and you're like, you don't have a clue. Like,
How
zero.
hard it's
Like,
going to be.
so like the aftermarket, like even this EV conversion thing is not an easy thing. Like
No.
you're not casually doing this on a weekend. Like, oh, I'm just going to throw an electric motor in so I get more jump off the line.
Yeah.
No, it's so far away from that still. It's crazy.
It would take someone who has an incredible amount of knowledge in both the EV part and the EFI part to make them seamlessly work together.
Yeah, because there's that overlap section where one is transitioning into the other, and that can't be cheap.
Yeah.
Like you got people struggling to tune their normal cars.
Yeah.
Now you're trying to tune
Yeah.
two systems
Yeah.
at the same time. Like I think it's so far away still.
Yeah.
So like the amount of time and effort that goes into these things that they're creating it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were literally just talking about it before we turned on the cameras of just how much goes into the development of a car, especially a modern
A modern
car.
vehicle is wild how much money a manufacturer will spend on it. And people don't really understand that it's like several $100 million or upwards of $1 billion to develop even the most generic new car.
Yeah, because give us the example that you gave, and
Yeah, years ago I ran into some Dodge engineers down in the Bay Area, and they were testing what was now like the new Jeep Cherokee, and I'd stopped and chatted with them for a bit, and they've been driving around the entire country for 3 months developing the software just to make the car function. And they said on average, just for the software alone in the vehicle, is a minimum of 10,000 hours to develop the software for it. Yeah.
And then you see these custom cars that now are costing $1 million to build.
Yeah.
what?
And you think about, and I think it's the transition is because of the expectation of what people want out of cars now. So you think about how much money that goes into your average commuter car and like how well they work.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like I don't know
Decades of
anybody
use
in our
with
world
normal
that's building
maintenance.
custom
Yeah.
cars that can get like 300,000 kilometers out of a build.
Yeah.
A build without a single mechanical failure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's insane.
it's insane.
It's literally insane.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, we're constantly messing with shit. So people got on our case because I was like, I'm tired with messing with shit. But I'm literally messing with shit all day, every single day. And I'm exhausted by it. So like then you start to gain an appreciation for just how well these things work.
Yes.
And then our expectation for how well things have to work when it leaves, it's like, man, I got a headache almost every day.
Yeah.
It's
What part of headache?
Because the expectation is so
It
high.
should work all the
Like,
time.
It should. People
Yeah.
want everything to work all the time. And like the expectations now are so high.
Yeah.
Like we have the most simplest, like, how come this, can we make it better? Like, well, it lasted 17 years.
Yeah.
Like, how much better do you want it? Like, no, we'll reservice it and you'll be good for another 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But people are like, nope, I want it to like forever. I don't ever even want to think about it.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I also think that is why people are moving. Again, we're talking about electrification, but this is why people are moving towards electrifying, for example, like hot rods, because the typical, like back in the day, or what we knew a hot rod
Okay,
to
wait,
be.
I got to cut you off on the hot rod thing.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yes, of the hot rod topic. It's like all these people chime in like, you know, if you want to like EV swap something and you want to electrify it, it's like you shouldn't be touching hot rods. I'm like, it's the hot rod
That's
guys
what
that are
it's-
doing it.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't
No
see
one's
any
going around like you didn't
green
come out of the-
environmentalists coming in like swapping their cars over. It's not like there's a lineup of. It's not like there's
Yeah,
a
like
lineup
I didn't
of.
come steal your car and EV swap it against your will. You
Yeah.
came and asked for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the hot rod guys that are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're tired of messing with things.
Yeah, they just want to go drive and go like blindingly fast.
Yeah.
Yes. Back to the original topic, which was NA Turbo Supercharger. I want to know personally which one you guys prefer.
I like superchargers
Okay.
just from their simplicity
Yeah.
and packaging. They're much easier to package into a car.
Yeah, because you literally just plop it on top of.
And then you usually don't
I wouldn't say it that easily,
Not like
but
that. I mean,
they generally have their limitations, but I mean, they're all the ancillary things that you have to do with a supercharger is much less than turbocharging.
so what do you have to do for a supercharger? Do you need everything like intercooler, all of that stuff?
depends on the
Well, it
motor.
depends on the motor and how much boost you're trying to create, and that's a big thing with turbochargers is like now you're adding in all kinds of heat management sort of stuff. So depending on what you're putting it in, the packaging can get crazy. And then whereas a supercharger, generally they're fairly easy to install. Like a root style on a new car, you just plop it on the top and away you go. Like that, you're all set. The transition is fairly simple if you're doing like most modern V8 platforms. Somebody makes a supercharger kit for it.
Absolutely.
And then even like a Pro Charger, it's fairly easy, and you're not dealing with now you're routing heat through exhaust tubing into areas of the car that was never intended to have it.
Yeah.
So it's, it's pretty easy too. Whereas turbocharging, there's lots of advantages to its efficiency and all this kind of stuff, but packaging is generally a lot harder. Some cars are easy. Like you get a Honda Civic, it's easy to put a turbo. There's lots of room there. You just put it straight on the front and away you go. So it's pretty easy, but you want to start driving like a turbocharger into, I don't know, pick a modern car. There's very little room in there.
Any V8. Yeah.
And then now you got to try to manage all this heat that you're creating under hood, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
So the cars that you see that, people comment on putting turbos in are generally have quite a bit of room. But say you want to twin turbocharge your Challenger, your 392 Challenger, where are you going to put them?
That's true.
Like, there's not a lot of room, so of course you could get a Hellcat. You wouldn't twin turbocharger. You'd probably just get a Hellcat. But like, even now, what have they switched to get twin turbochargers? Is Hot Vs. Hot Vs are like the most common setup around. Which
What is a Hot V?
where they move the turbochargers to the top of the engine.
Oh.
So now the outer side.
Oh,
of the
like
head.
Audi. Okay, I feel like I've seen that on the
BMW
Urus.
Hot V. Yeah.
Mercedes, because of packaging requirements.
Yeah.
So the packaging requirement. So why would you do a Hot V like minus the packaging? Like, does it have any other
That's
benefits?
really the
Packaging
only
is the only
reason.
one.
Oh, okay,
Packaging.
okay. Yeah. So it's on top of the intake?
It's in the V, literally in between the.
So they almost
where the intake
reverse the
manifold
heads.
would be. Yeah.
So that they pull from where your exhaust manifolds would traditionally be. That will be your intake, and then it's forced out the inside.
Oh, okay.
So instead of your induction coming down through the top of your heads,
Coming
it
in
comes
the edges.
coming in the edges and forcing out the top, just solely for packaging.
That's insane.
Basically, reverse the flow of the heads.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. It's just they reverse the in and outs. That's it.
Okay.
And it's all for packaging. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's any more efficient in any way, but
Yeah.
maybe it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Because is the route shorter that the gases take? It is, right?
Yeah, it would
Compared
be
to
shorter.
so I guess that might lead
Might
to
add some efficiency. to it.
faster spooling times and all
But
that.
you have a lot more heat too than now that you
Oh,
have to
yeah,
deal with.
because everything
the
is
heat
just
is
in-
concentrated directly in the middle of your motor.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so you have things that actually, the more reliability issues, I guess, depending on, I guess, the way that the heat is managed. But what about you, Steve?
It would be completely situational. If I were to take a new vehicle, I guess for simplicity wise, I'd probably agree with Tim on the blower part. Just because if I had a V8 car and I wanted to put some kind of forced induction, the packaging and time of install, a supercharger is obviously a lot easier. If you're at the track, I don't know. I'd probably choose a turbo over the supercharger. Only because it's only personal preference. It's only because I just love how a big turbo looks, how it sounds, how it functions. Like, I prefer that over the sound of a blower for sure at the track.
Okay. I don't know which one I would take either.
Yeah.
Because I love the turbo sounds. Like, it just sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. For daily driver sound, I'll probably take a turbo. Just because it just sounds, I don't know, it's more laughter, more noises.
You got to build all that into your system,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Most turbo cars, you're not hearing any of that stuff.
No, they got like recirculating
No, just
blow
waste.
valves and
Waste gates. Just get like, are there like specific, like, what if I want to hear all those noises, and like, because on the Tahoe you don't hear any of that stuff. I mean, there's a massive boost leak, but like, how do you get those?
Well, right now that thing's not even making a whole bunch of boosts.
No.
So we're not even probably getting to the point where even opening the gates or even knocking the blow-off valve off. So like it's because we haven't really spent a lot of time on the tune-up on that truck, we're not going to hear any of that stuff at the moment.
Yeah. So are there specific like wastegates or something that are made for maximizing sound?
Well, mostly external wastegates and blow-off valves. Yeah. So a lot of modern turbos have
internally gated.
Yeah. So just going out your exhaust system, so that's not a separate thing. Blow-off valves are the same. It's all routed through different resonators and in part of your induction system. Yeah. So you're not really hearing those noises.
It was like all the dudes back in the day with like your WRX or Subaru.
I love
the first thing you do is you put an extral blow-off valve on it because that's every one to hear the noise.
Yeah. I feel like if I ever own a turbocharged car, that's the first thing I'll do. It's just I just love the extra noises.
Valves?
Yeah, I'm a child like that. So, but also you can't argue with the sound of a supercharger. Like I love the whine.
Gear whine from a big blower is
so good.
Great noise too.
Especially in modern ones now.
Yeah.
Some of these big Magnusons and Whipples just sound insane.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's
but
crisp.
they've gotten a lot more efficient too. Like you get like
the
some
rotor
of those
design
old
is
skull blowers. Like they only made 4 or 5 psi. Those like they were not very good.
Yeah,
they were on school buses and shit back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Boat. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Whereas modern ones now, they're getting big boost out of some of these.
Yeah, like I love the sound. I'm wondering what a Hellcat makes without the supercharger. Like I'm wondering.
Well, the motor
was built specifically for a supercharger. So NA, the thing probably would be a dog.
Yeah, it's probably 300 horsepower.
Oh, okay.
It's probably a turd without it because the piston design, everything else to go along with it was developed for the boost.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually a good point to make because before you turbocharge a lot of cars, or if you're turbocharging with a lot of boost, like what do you have to
supercharger?
What do you have to beef up usually?
Well, most modern vehicles you can typically get away with, like, I know people will do way more, but like 7-8 pounds is pretty much what most kind of kits are kind of rated for.
Okay.
Because the stock pistons and connecting rods are going to be your weak link as far as an internal piece of the engine go.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and a lot of stuff is based on your jumping off point.
Yeah.
So a lot of times to do a turbo kit, you have to lower the compression ratio of your motor before you start putting a whole bunch of boost in it.
Yeah.
Because if you have a high compression motor, like that's doing 9.5, 10 to 1, and you start boosting it, you're not going to be able to put a lot of boost in it.
Oh.
You might only be
even
able to
some
put
of the
like
NA stuff could be even upward, like close to 12 to 1 in some of the more high performance cars.
Some of the more traditional performance cars would be, like 11, 12.
That's why you got to run premium fuel and all those things. Like
that's higher. That's a lot higher than
so you cram 8 pounds of boost into a 12 to 1 car, and you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, you're going to be fighting detonation.
And so how would you reduce the compression?
There's lots of cheats. You either build the bottom end or you can get thicker head gaskets to start dropping the compression ratio.
Oh.
So you'll see big copper gaskets just to get it down into a happy place where you can start putting some boost into it. Yeah.
So for an LS, for example, like how do you do that? Same thing, like, because
I don't know, rotating assemblies and things have gotten so cheap over the years that you would just put a better crank rod pistons in it because the cost of it, like if you wanted to make big power numbers, you wouldn't hesitate to just go buy some better parts. Like, I'm not saying that, like I've known people at the track running stock bottom end stuff, running insane amounts of boost through a stock bottom end LS, but the lifespan's short. Like I know guys running 30 plus pounds of boost in a stock 5.3 bottom end, but every 10 runs they got to put a set of rods in it.
That's the internet, though. So everybody will gravitate towards that one guy.
Yeah.
There's one guy that made 1,600 horsepower on the stock bottom end.
Yep.
So now every LS ever made can do the same thing. You'll get another guy that'll do the exact same thing and pop the motor the first time he goes out.
Yeah.
And it's the same as the Honda kids. It's like one guy did 1,000 horsepower in a stock bottom end, so now they can all do
that
it.
one time 10 years ago.
That one time. But the reality is like that's not the case. It's like that's 1 in 1,000.
Yeah.
It's the same as the LS guy. Like you hear You know, lots of guys are running like
Made 1,000.
700 horsepower that lasts forever.
On a stock block and everything.
Stock block.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's great. And then you get the next guy that's like, he puts 5 pounds in it and pops the heads off of it.
Sadly, like that, a lot of that probably comes down to the
Tune
supporting
up,
people.
like,
Tune up.
all the
Like,
stuff.
did he bother getting bigger injectors? Did he bother doing anything? Did he just put boost in it and hoping it was going to stay together? Like, that would be just completely asinine. But like a lot of people think of like, oh, it's going to put a turbo on, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But like,
It's not fine.
like
No.
you can take a stock bottom end, put a big turbo on it, as long as you get the supporting mods, everything go with it. Yeah, you can build yourself a reliable
need a lot of
700 horsepower
fuel
car
and-
easily. Yeah.
Tune.
Yeah.
Tune's the biggest.
Tune is the biggest one. You gotta find yourself a reliable tuner. That is the be all end all
That's
to making
another
reliable
whole
power.
podcast.
But that's a
Yes.
complete
Yeah,
other
we're gonna make
podcast,
that
yeah.
a topic of its own. Yeah, because you guys have dealt with tuners and you've seen both ends great and
I've seen
terrible.
Yeah, I've worked with some of the what I would consider the best tuners on the planet versus like all the way down to like your average backyard guy making flash tunes for people and there's a
Doesn't take
very
much
large
to-
difference.
to
Yeah.
Mess up.
kill a motor.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a small window.
Yeah. And so, final question: would you take a high horsepower, naturally aspirated motor or like forced induction?
Depends on the car.
Yeah, I would say, well, there's too many other variables to that.
Yeah,
Because like if you got a high horsepower V12, it sounds nutty.
Insane.
But again, if you're just trying to make power,
Yeah.
I would probably go with a supercharged
yeah.
V8.
Like,
all
what's
day
the
long.
goal? It would be totally goal oriented. Like, I've had the opportunity to go in some like high horsepower NA vehicles, and it's a riot to have that instant huge flash up of RPM
Yeah.
and just wild amounts of up top power. and there's nothing sounds better than a well built NA engine, but there's also sitting back and getting your ass handed to you in the seat by a big supercharged turbo car is also a completely different experience. Yeah.
The torque
Yeah.
numbers on a supercharged car are
Yeah.
savage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you get these high horsepower, V12s. Nothing sounds like them.
No.
But they're dogs off the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot.
They're only
of-
making power in that like
Top
upper
end.
3,000 RPM, and other that they're gutless to go drive around. Yeah.
And like, what do you? I mean, it's probably a lot of different things, but is there anything that you would need generally for a high horsepower build? Like, what are the summary of things that you need for like a high horsepower, naturally aspirated LS?
It comes down to the same things. You want your good base parts, like especially the high RPM stuff. You're gonna want like the best valve train possible. So
get
that way
big- a big power NA motor is going to cost you a lot of money.
Really, even
Oh, yeah.
more so than a turbo
yeah.
system
Yeah,
kit.
100%.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Because you're stressing all those parts on them. They're not near as efficient as a blown
No.
or
Oh,
turbocharged
okay.
motor.
That makes sense.
So then you need to buy all the big boy stuff.
Yeah.
Like 1,000 horsepower NA motor is going to be an expensive motor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get. Like that jump from, like, say 500 to 1,000 in an NA motor gets really
Like
expensive.
especially for like something as like an LS,
Yeah.
because you're requiring a aftermarket block, so because you're going to need huge cubic inches to make 1,000 horsepower. So we're talking like a 440 inch LS,
Wow.
like as big as you can make the damn thing. And then all of the whizzy parts that go with it, best kind of billet crankshaft, best rods, everything to be properly balanced, assembled perfectly, the best valve train, good injectors, and an ECU tuning all to go with it. Like, as far as 1,000 horsepower like NALSs, there's probably a handful of them.
Wow.
You see the ceiling for those LS motors is like 650,
Yeah.
700 horsepower.
NA.
Yeah.
NA.
Okay.
And then I think it just doesn't make financial sense
Yeah,
to
it's
push
just
it
an
beyond
exponential,
Yeah.
it's like law of diminishing returns.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like you spend another $4,000, put a supercharger on it, and you
Yeah.
got 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll do it all day, every day.
Yeah.
So
And then the rest of the time it's not being beat up, because like if you're not heavy-footed driving around your
Yeah.
boosted car,
Yeah.
where
You're
the
not
NA
on
motor is always under stress.
Yeah. That's a very good point that I didn't even
Yeah.
consider.
Yeah.
people still do it.
Yeah. No, I'm
I've
all
seen
for
it
it. Yeah.
No, you have all the power
Absolutely. Yeah.
once you put your foot
Yeah.
down, as opposed to
Yeah.
like, I mean, you do have, that's also another benefit of a supercharger. Power is always there.
It
But-
is much more instant than a turbo is ever going to be, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But,
Awesome.
the minute you add performance, reliability obviously tapers off dramatically. So if
Just
we're going to,
overbuild it.
yeah,
That's the comment. That's what the comment section says.
Yeah.
I don't know what your problem is.
Yeah.
You probably just suck at it.
Because at the end of the day, like a 1,000 horsepower anything isn't going to be reliable for very long.
No.
Like you're going to have to do some maintenance on it, a fair amount of maintenance on it, to keep it making that kind of power level reliably all the time.
That's definitely when you're making something that was never designed to make 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like now there's things literally designed, like you get Hellcats and you get some of these other cars, but the amount of development that went into it to make 1,000 horsepower,
Yeah.
now you're starting to see reliability out of it. But how long did that take? It literally
Decades.
took.
But even that,
It took
you
100
go out
years
there
for them
and
to get to this
Decades.
point.
Yeah.
you drive that thing at its 1,000 horsepower level,
It's not
a
gonna
bunch,
last.
it ain't gonna last. I don't care. I don't care how well it was built. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see it at the track where like guys not that you want your motor to explode or have an issue, but these guys all know that like one small miscalculation on their tune-up,
And that's it.
lights out for this very expensive engine package. And they all know that risk every single round, and they lean on these things as hard as they can to get around the guy to the next round. And they know that like one small mistake or one
And
miss,
it's
Yeah.
not a mistake that
No.
it has nothing to do with the way the motor's built.
No.
You just blow a shift and
Yeah.
that's it.
Exactly.
Your motor's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah. That's so crazy.
Like it can happen.
like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
like
quickly.
especially like
literally-
the big mechanical injected pro mod cars. One of my clients popped the motor because his foot wasn't on the gas.
No.
So
Wait, what?
So you're going to think about it. A mechanical fuel pump needs the RPM to create the fuel flow going
Yes.
in. So if for some reason he knocks a tire off, say he gets a bit of tire shake and he lets out of the gas, so now he's lost. The engine's still at the very high RPM.
Oh, and he's lost.
But now he's lost all the RPM, so he doesn't have the fuel up there anymore. And so if he doesn't get back in it to get the fuel flow back into the motor, he's going to lean out and it's going to hurt the motor. And like that's a very common thing. Is that like so you got to like.
I still don't know why you'd be running mechanical fuel injection on something that powerful.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's mechanical. It's not. It's not reliable. It is reliable, but for the most part, it's mechanical. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just another. It's talking about also more electrification. I was just listening to what's it called, Spike's Car Radio.
Yeah.
They were talking about this company. I forgot their name, but they make like BMWs and they make them electric.
Yeah.
They convert them to electric, and they just sent one to him to review, and he was just talking of like, oh yeah, you expect to hear like whenever you just put an electric motor in like any classic car, you have to hear all the rattles because the motor drowns out a lot of that noise. But when you don't have that, you're probably going to hear all the rattles and creaks and all of that. But he was saying that to the testament of people that built it, apparently, like they addressed all of that, and so it literally just sounds quiet.
Well, if you take a car as well built as most German cars are, you're not going to have a lot of squeaks and rattles. And I've learned this by working on the G-Wagon. I didn't realize how much screws and hardware go into a Mercedes dash. It is unbelievable.
There's no clips.
Yeah, like
It's all
insane.
screws,
like I did
bolts.
my apprenticeship at Honda. The entire dash in those cars unclipped. There's
Yeah,
no
you just
there's no
pull it
screws,
hard
there's
enough
no
and it
bolts.
comes
Exactly,
off.
right? So like having to take out 200 or 300 screws out of a dash to get a dash out of a car, I've never done that before.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So that's a true testament of how like the level of engineering goes in those cars and why those cars don't have squeaking rattles to start with. So like if you take a quietly well-built car, you're probably going to be okay by doing the EV
You
swap on
electrify
it.
a Honda.
Yeah, if you electrify
It's gonna sound like
a 93 Honda Civic, it's gonna sound like a rattly hunk of garbage. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I was just like very surprised because it's also interesting too because so many more people that are not even hot rod people, I feel like, have started to get interested in like electrified classics now. I feel like that's a big thing that I've been hearing about. I've listened to a few podcasts in the past few weeks, and I feel like that's all the rage or all the talk. And like you said, like people are paying big money for these things.
Massive amounts of money.
It's insane.
I think, like, I've commented a bunch of times, like, you get all these guys in there, like, we love playing with big horsepower motors and superchargers and turbos, which started this whole conversation, but there's legitimate car enthusiasts that love cars, they love the aesthetic of the cars, they love driving the cars, and they don't want to work on cars.
No,
they just
there's a
wanna drive
lot of
cars.
people. Yeah, a
Some
lot.
people just want to drive cars.
Yep.
But if you're not working on your car, now you're not a legitimate car
I know.
enthusiast, which is crazy because some people are car enthusiasts, and a lot of these people in their defense, because this is my business, this is what I do every day, they're the ones that help drive the industry as much or more than the guys that are in their garage working on it.
Yes.
Because they're taking money from other industries that they've created through different successes and putting it in ours and giving us opportunity to make things better. Because to do it yourself, guys, like, it's awesome you're a car enthusiast, but you're not helping progress the industry. You're using what's already available.
Established, yeah.
There's no money for any kind of innovation or making anything better. So it's like, people are probably going to hate me for it, but those aren't the guys that are helping me build awesome stuff.
No.
Like, they're, you know, so I have a certain amount of respect for these guys. And, like, you know, the guy that we're doing a car for now, like, this guy is like, man, he is deep. Like, you're not tricking him. He wants to know just as much as you do. So if you make a suggestion, he goes away and like,
does his own research.
He does his own research and deep dives, and he's making smart decisions and confirming that we're making smart decisions. So you can't just dismiss this guy as not being a car enthusiast. Like, he's got all the cars, he's got all the things, and he is heavily, heavily invested in it.
Yeah.
So to dismiss that is crazy. So
yeah. I think we should do a whole episode on that, actually.
we should, because I mean,
who is a real car guy?
Yeah, like,
I'm gonna write that down.
No, it's a fair one. It's just like, is like, I see it from all different sides too. Like, all the shops and all the people I work with and track and all the other stuff. Like, you can be the guy sitting in the stands and just be as passionate about the guy who's actually sitting on the starting line in the car. It doesn't make a difference to me. Like, if you're out there supporting what you enjoy in the motorsport industry, go do it.
Yeah, so to make the statement that you're not a real car guy unless you're working on stuff, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a huge car enthusiast, and 90% of the cars that, like, I lust after, I wouldn't know the first thing about being able to work on them. Like, you open the back, like, especially the way things have progressed now. Like, you know, we all lust after supercars, and, well, maybe not everybody. Of course, someone's going to be like, muscle cars are the best. But, like, modern shit, I wouldn't even know where to begin.
They don't even let you open the back of it. Like the new GT3 RS, like, you can't even open the trunk to see the engine. Not the trunk, the back of it to see the engine. They don't even let you
check your own oil. You gotta do a weird key thing, and it tells you.
Most modern cars are that way now, just to avoid that human mistake.
Yeah, they don't want you messing it up. So.
Yeah, that's true.
That's why manual transmissions have gone away. Y'all can't drive out there.
So it's so sad. It's so sad. So yeah, which one do you guys prefer? Comment in the comment section below. Supercharger, NA, turbo, electric. There's a whole.
This one was like a walk through the woods.
Yeah, I know, all over the place. Don't worry, it's gonna be edited. Spectacular. By the time it's done. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching this. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and we will see you guys later. Bye.